I saw her eyes through the smoke, yellow, still, and locked on mine. And in that instant, something inside me cracked. The fire had started 3 days ago, maybe 4. It tore through the hills behind my house like a hungry thing. The news said it was caused by lightning, but folks around here knew better. Too many careless campers. Too many dry months. I had evacuated 2 nights ago when the sheriff knocked, yelling through the smoke to get out. I packed up a few things, loaded my old Ford, and drove to town. But something about my place pulled me back. Maybe it was the land, maybe it was guilt. I came back yesterday afternoon. The fire had shifted direction, sparing my cabin but scorching everything around it. Trees were blackened, the air still heavy with the smell of burnt pine and plastic. Ash blanketed the porch like gray snow. I didn't sleep that night. The wind howled, and every creak of the cabin made me think the fire had circled back. At sunrise, I opened the back door to check the generator, and there she was, a cougar, big, muscular, but thin, too thin. Her ribs showed through her fur. Her tail twitched, but her eyes, they held me. And behind her, almost hidden in the tall grass that hadn't yet burned, 3 small shapes moved. Cubs. They stumbled forward, tripping over each other, still wobbly on their legs. One of them looked straight at me and gave the tiniest mewl. It wasn't threatening. It was desperate. I didn't move. I didn't even breathe. My body tensed, heart pounding. I remembered every warning sign at the ranger stations. Do not approach, dangerous, wild predator. But she didn't growl, didn't bare her teeth. She just looked at me, then down at the cubs, then back at me. A plea. That's what it felt like. I slowly stepped back inside, closed the door, and leaned against it. My hands were shaking. What the hell was I supposed to do with a mother cougar and 3 cubs on my property? I spent the rest of the morning peeking through the blinds. They stayed by the edge of the clearing, away from the house. The mother never sat. She stood guard, eyes scanning, ears twitching. The cubs nursed, then curled up together in the shade of a scorched bush. I couldn't stop thinking about them. I kept seeing that look in her eyes. I tried to busy myself, cleaning soot off the porch, checking the roof, but I kept drifting back to the window. By sunset, they hadn't moved. I opened a can of tuna and placed it outside, 20 feet from the back steps. I knew it was stupid. I knew it was dangerous, but my body moved before my brain could stop it. That night, I sat by the back window, lights off, staring out. Hours passed. Then movement. She crept forward, slow and silent, sniffed the can. She didn't eat. She nudged it toward the cubs. They came one by one, tiny paws on Ash, wide eyes. They devoured it. All of it. She just watched. I watched her watch them. Something passed between us again. Across the dark. Not trust. Not yet. But something. I didn't sleep that night. Not really. I lay on the couch with the lights off, an old axe leaning against the wall beside me. Every creak made me flinch. Every gust of wind brushing the windows made my stomach twist. But they never came closer. I checked through the window every hour or so. The cubs were curled into a tight little pile near the burnt-out tree stump, and the mother stayed nearby, barely moving, except to look toward the cabin now and then. She didn't rest. She just stood watch. At one point, I opened the door a crack, just enough to hear. Nothing. No growling. No rustling. Only the faint chirp of crickets returning after the fire. The forest was trying to heal. By morning, a light fog had settled. I stepped outside slowly, axe still in hand. I expected them to be gone. Part of me hoped they were, but they were still there. The cubs had moved closer to the woodpile. 2 of them were swatting at each other playfully, rolling over in the ash like they didn't have a care in the world. The third one, the smallest, sat off to the side, licking its paw slowly. The mother was lying down now, but alert, eyes fixed on me. I didn't get too close, just far enough to get a better look. Her body was gaunt, fur patchy in spots. She had a long, healed scar down her left flank. Old wound. Survivor. I recognized that look. I'd seen it before. Back in Afghanistan, when the convoy I was part of got hit, I'd pulled a local girl from a collapsed building. She had that same look. Wide, sunken eyes. Not afraid. Not crying. Just empty. Like all the fear had been burned out and replaced with something colder. That girl didn't speak a word. But the way she held onto my hand, it said everything. And now, somehow, I saw the same thing in this cougar. I crouched near the porch steps, resting my arms on my knees. I watched the cubs for a long while. They were life. Real, raw, unfiltered life, clawing its way forward after disaster. They didn't care who I was. They didn't understand fear yet. They just wanted warmth, food, safety. I went inside, opened a few old cans, tuna again, some chicken breast, even a half-empty can of beans. I lined them up in a shallow metal tray and left it 10 feet from the edge of the clearing. Then I backed away. She didn't move. Not at first. I went back inside, waited. Hours passed. Finally, the cubs approached. Cautiously. The smallest hung back until the others started eating. The mother rose slowly and padded toward them. She didn't touch the food. Again, she let them eat first. I watched them for a long time that day. The sun moved across the sky. The ash on the ground stirred in the breeze. I didn't do much else. At dusk, I saw the mother limping slightly as she lay back down near the woodpile. I didn't realize I was crying until I tasted salt. It wasn't pity. It was something else. Something deeper. Loss recognizes loss. By the third morning, I'd built a routine I never imagined I'd live. I'd wake before dawn, check the clearing, and prepare food and water. The old cooler behind the shed worked well for storing meat. I packed it with ice from town. I tore cooked chicken into strips, filled a metal bowl with clean water, and left them near the woodpile where the cubs played. They came as if they knew it was for them. And maybe they did. The mother still hadn't eaten anything. She would nudge the food toward her cubs and sit nearby, watching. There was something noble in her restraint, but also something worrying. She was getting weaker. The limp in her back leg had worsened. That night, I reviewed the footage from the porch camera. I hadn't checked it in days. Most of it was dull wind, squirrels, the occasional raccoon. But then, around midnight the night before, I saw her. The cougar stepped into frame slowly, glancing toward the cabin. Then she picked up a piece of chicken and brought it directly to the smallest cub. Not dropped it, brought it, placed it by his mouth. It hit me hard. I don't know why. Maybe it was how gentle she was, how precise. The next day, I made the mistake of telling Henry from down the road that I'd seen a few animals wandering close to my property. I didn't say what kind, just critters. He grunted and told me about how the fire pushed wildlife toward the valley. Then he mentioned something that made my blood run cold. "You hear those shots the other night?" he said. "Up near Miller's Trail? Couple of fellas say they saw big cats. Rangers might be culling if they think they're injured." That night I didn't sleep. Just after midnight, I heard it again. Distant but sharp. One shot, then another. I was on my feet in seconds. I grabbed a flashlight, threw on boots, and ran to the back porch. The mother was already up, pacing. The cubs were huddled near the shed. Without thinking, I ran out to them. My voice was low, shaky. "Come on, come here." Of course, they didn't understand. But they didn't run either. I opened the shed door, pulled a folded tarp to the side. It smelled of oil and dust. I whistled softly, like calling a dog. The cubs moved first. Then the mother. Slow, hesitant. But they went in. I shut the door and slid the latch. Inside the house, I sat at the kitchen table, heart racing, hands clenched. I didn't know if I'd done the right thing. I just knew I couldn't let anyone find them. The next morning, Henry dropped by. "Saw some tracks up near your place," he said. "Mountain lion, maybe. Be careful." I nodded, calm as I could fake it. "Probably just a stray dog. Had some scratching under the house last night." He raised an eyebrow. "Big dog." "Yeah," I said. "Real big." When he left, I exhaled slowly. I was in it now. No going back. 3 cubs. 1 dying forest. And a mother bleeding quietly into the hay. The snow was gone, replaced by wet earth and green shoots forcing their way through ash. Spring had taken hold. You could hear it in the birdsong, see it in the budding branches. But life returning to the forest didn't mean it was healed. She limped worse now. The mother cougar barely put weight on her back leg. I watched her pace inside the shed, careful and deliberate. The cubs were restless, but one, the smallest, barely moved at all. He lay on a pile of old blankets I'd thrown down, sides rising too fast, too shallow. I knew that look too. Dehydration, starvation, maybe infection. I had to do something. I drove to town, trying to act normal. The roads had cleared, though the smell of charred would still lingered if you cracked the window. I stopped at the feed store first, bought chicken, liver, ground beef. Then I asked for powdered goat's milk, vitamin paste, anything meant for weak kittens. The guy behind the counter raised an eyebrow. Bottle feeding raccoons now, huh? Something like that, I said. I paid in cash. Then I did something I hadn't done in years. I went to the vet. There was only one clinic in town. Small, square building near the gas station. I pushed the door open and felt like I'd walked into another life. The receptionist looked up and froze, then smiled. Mike? No way. You're alive. Mostly. She buzzed me through without asking why I was there. And that's when I saw him. Will Jennings. Captain Will Jennings, back in the day. We served together on 2 deployments. He patched me up after I took shrapnel outside Kandahar. Now he wore scrubs and a wedding ring. He looked at me for half a second before recognition hit. Jesus, you're a ghost. Not today, I said. We hugged, briefly. I don't do that with many people. He didn't ask what brought me in, he just waited. I placed the bag of supplies on the counter. I've got something. Injured. Wild. I can't bring it here, but it needs help. One's not doing good. He nodded slowly. How big? Big. Mountain lion. 3 cubs. Will didn't flinch. Just let out a breath. You keeping them fed? Trying. The mom won't eat. 1 cub's fading. He walked over to a cabinet, pulled out a box of supplies, antibiotic cream, oral drops, more nutritional paste. You're not supposed to intervene, he said. I know. But if you didn't, they'd be dead already. He handed me the box. No needles. You don't want to risk infection. Use gloves. Mix this with water. Twice a day. And you need to get her eating. Raw liver if you can. It's rich. I stood there unsure. You think it's wrong? He looked me dead in the eyes. I think letting something suffer when you can help is worse. We're not gods, but we're not cowards either. Back in the truck, I sat for a long time with the supplies in my lap, watching the people pass by, filling up gas, sipping coffee. I used to be one of them. Now I had wild animals in my shed and a dying cub depending on me. And for the first time in years, that felt more real than anything else.
If you love stories about wildlife rescue, click the subscribe button below. Here's how the button looks on different devices. Every subscription helps spread these stories and raise awareness. The more people know, the more animals get the help they need. And remember, subscribing is completely free. Click subscribe now and join us in protecting wildlife.
She didn't come back that night. I woke up to the cubs crying. That's the only word I have for the sound they made, thin, high-pitched whimpers that scraped something raw inside me. They pawed at the shed door, pacing, yowling, nudging one another in confusion. I waited. An hour. 2. I checked the perimeter with the flashlight, boots crunching on the damp ground. No sign of her. By noon, I couldn't sit still. Logic told me to wait. Wild animals do this, they disappear, they come back. But nothing about this was normal anymore. I grabbed the old hunting knife, wrapped a blanket around my shoulders, and headed into the woods. The trail she usually took was faint, but I'd seen it enough times. Broken branches, paw prints in the mud, disturbed patches of grass. I followed it like a man chasing smoke. About half a mile in, the forest changed. Quieter, thicker, no birdsong, just wind through the blackened trees. That's when I saw blood. Just a few drops, dark and drying on a flat rock. Then I saw her. She was lying beside a fallen tree, chest heaving, one paw twisted unnaturally. Her back leg was caught in a rusted steel jaw trap, buried in the moss. I froze. She saw me, didn't growl, didn't move. Her eyes said everything. Help me. I stepped closer, heart pounding. Her breathing was shallow. The leg was bleeding badly. I kneeled, reaching into my pocket for the knife. Okay, I whispered. Okay, just don't bite me. I sawed at the coiled wire that tethered the trap to the tree root. Took longer than I expected. My hands were shaking. The knife slipped, nicked my palm. Finally, it gave way. She didn't move. I pried the jaws of the trap open. They creaked, old and stubborn. Her legs slipped free. Still, she didn't move. So I did what no sane person would have done. I wrapped her in the blanket, hoisted her into my arms, and started walking. She was heavier than she looked. Muscles, dead weight, blood. I staggered, stumbled, cursed. The trail blurred in places. My shirt stuck to my back. My breath rasped in my throat. I carried her over a mile. At the cabin, I laid her gently on the floor of the pantry. Cleared space, turned on the old heater, laid down towels, put a bowl of water beside her head. She didn't lift it. I cleaned the wound with warm water, poured a capful of antiseptic. She flinched but didn't fight me. Then I sat beside her. The cubs pressed against the door outside. Silent now. I stayed up all night, listening to her breathe. Slow, shallow. I watched the rise and fall of her chest like it was a prayer. At one point, I reached out and placed a hand gently on her side. Her eyes opened. No fear. Only pain. Only trust. It started with Henry. He showed up around mid-morning, holding a half-empty mug of coffee and that suspicious squint he always got when something didn't sit right. "Saw some movement near your shed," he said casually. "Figured it was raccoons, but one of them looked bigger. You keeping pets I don't know about?" I shrugged. "Probably just a coyote. They've been bold lately." Henry didn't buy it. He lingered too long, eyes drifting toward the shed. "You sure? Looked like a big cat. And there's talk up the ridge. Something's been seen by a few folks. Wildlife officers might come around." I nodded, heart pounding under my shirt. "Let me know if you hear more." By the time he left, I was already sweating. I moved the cubs. The mother was still weak but able to stand, barely. I set up an area in the crawl space under the cabin, dark, cool, hidden. I padded it with hay and old towels. It wasn't perfect, but it was better than the pantry. They settled in quickly. The cubs curled up together. The mother lay close, her breath still labored but steadier. Then, late that afternoon, the knock came. 3 of them. 2 officers in khaki jackets with state patches, and 1 local cop. All serious faces and clipped voices. "We've had reports of large predators in this area," said the taller officer. "Mind if we look around?" I hesitated a second too long. "It'll just be a routine check." I stepped aside. "Go ahead." They split up. 1 checked the shed. Another circled the perimeter. The third, the younger one, entered the house. "Any pets?" he asked. "Nope." "Any signs of wild animals? Droppings? Tracks?" "Some prints a few days ago, but nothing recent." He poked into the kitchen, the pantry, then made his way to the back hall, and stopped, right above them. The cubs were directly beneath the floorboards. 2 meters, maybe less. I held my breath. He cocked his head, listened. I prayed for silence. One of the cubs sneezed. A tiny, muffled puff of sound, barely audible. The officer froze. "You hear that?" "Mice," I said quickly. "This place is full of them since the fire." He waited a beat longer, then nodded. "Could be." He turned back. 20 minutes later, they all left. "Thanks for your cooperation," the tall one said. "If you see anything at all, call us. For your safety." I closed the door behind them, locked it, and leaned against it. My legs went weak. I slid down to the floor, heart still pounding. That was too close. Too damn close. Down below, I heard the soft rustle of fur, the shifting of paws, and 1 tiny yawn. Still here, still mine to protect. Started again with smoke. 1 week after the officers left, I smelled it in the wind. Sharp, bitter, wrong. The news confirmed it that night. Another wildfire, sparked by downed power lines 30 miles north and heading fast toward our valley. The order came at dawn. Mandatory evacuation. I stood in the driveway, staring at the trees, remembering how fast the last fire had moved. There was no time to think. I threw a tarp and rope in the truck bed, then ran inside. The cubs were under the floor, sleepy but alert. The mother had been improving. She could stand and move, though still stiff. I opened the crawlspace door and spoke softly. "Come on, guys. We gotta go." Took 10 minutes and a lot of coaxing to get them into the crate. An old dog carrier I'd reinforced with wire. They cried at first, scared by the movement. The mother followed slowly, limping, eyes wary but trusting. I wrapped her in another blanket and placed her gently on a mattress I'd laid in the truck bed. I strapped down the crate beside her, covered both with a dirty tarp, then scattered old tools, buckets, and junk over the top. From the outside, it looked like a messy haul of gear. Nothing more. I got behind the wheel, heart racing. The radio crackled with evacuation updates and road closures. About 5 miles down the road, just past the bend near the ranger station, I saw them. A roadblock, 2 sheriff's cruisers and a fire truck. Officers in yellow jackets were stopping every vehicle. My palms went cold. I pulled up slowly. One of the officers stepped up to my window. Young, polite. "Morning. You from up the ridge?" "Yeah," I said. "Cabin off Pine Loop. Bringing your stuff out?" "Tools, mostly. Some old junk I didn't want burned." He leaned over, peered into the truck bed. Mind if we take a quick look? I nodded. Sure, but be careful. That tarp's hiding a busted chainsaw. Blades loose. That made him pause. He walked around back, lifted the tarp slightly, then dropped it again. Looks like a pile of hell, he said, chuckling. Exactly, I said, forcing a grin. He waved me on. Be safe. I didn't breathe again until we were 2 miles past the checkpoint. I pulled over briefly in a clearing and checked them. The mother raised her head, blinking. One cub licked her ear. The smallest one had fallen asleep curled in his sibling's fur. We kept driving. I didn't know where I was going yet. Just away. I had crossed a line, and I knew there was no going back. But looking at them now, alive, whole, together, I didn't regret a thing. It had been 32 days. The fire was long out, but the damage lingered. Trees blackened to spires. Soil stripped bare. My cabin had survived, but the land around it looked like a photograph drained of color. I stood on the porch, staring at it all, wondering what the forest remembered. The wildlife center was about 40 miles south, tucked in the foothills, behind 2 locked gates and a winding dirt road. Not open to the public, but Will had pulled strings. He met me at the rear gate. They're stable, he said. Not tame, but calm. I followed him past pens and enclosures, past birds with bandaged wings and deer with splinted legs. Then we reached the last enclosure. The mother stood near a tree trunk, watching me. Her fur had grown back. She looked strong, alert. 2 cubs wrestled nearby, bigger now, bolder. The smallest one lay in the sun, curled but breathing steady. Will said he'd pulled through, but barely. She saw me, didn't flinch. She stepped forward, slow and sure, until she reached the wire. I knelt. For a long moment we just stared at each other. No sound, no movement, just shared stillness. And in that silence, something passed between us again. Not ownership, not farewell, something like gratitude. I asked the board, Will said behind me. We can release them, not far from here. Your ridge, actually. Same range. I nodded. I didn't need to think about it. They belonged there. A week later, they were gone. Will texted me a photo of the open crate. Forest in the background. No collar. No tags. No cages. Just wild again. I kept thinking I'd feel peace. But I didn't. Not quite. Not until the night it rained. Late around midnight. Wind in the trees. Steady drumming on the roof. I stood at the sink, filling a kettle, when something caught my eye. Movement. I stepped out onto the porch. The rain had softened the ground. The muddy path leading from the woods shimmered in the dark. And on it prints. 4 of them. Big, clear. Leading up to the steps. Then back again. Nothing else. No sound. No shape in the trees. Just that trail. I stood there a long time, barefoot in the wet, staring down at the prints until the rain started to wash them away. I never saw them again, but I still check. Every morning, I glance at the edge of the woods. Every night I listen, not for danger, but for a heartbeat I know isn't mine. Were they saying goodbye, or checking if I was still here? I don't know, and maybe that's the point.